Well, hi everyone. Jamie here, Jamie Brewster's Musical Heroes. And I've got a great friend and guest with me today. I know you've been looking forward to David coming back. David Leaf from Los Angeles with his fantastic recent book, Smile, Brian Wilson, Rise and Fall and Resurrection of Brian Wilson. And I've got it behind me. And I'd like to thank David for a wonderful book.
Thank you.
I've read it
Thank you.
twice now. So
Oh, so
I
what,
had
so we don't have to have a quiz.
no, we won't have a quiz. No, I don't think so. Thanks for everyone who's participated in some questions. Not as many as I was hoping. A few channel names that I won't bother reading out because they're complicated. But I'd like to just thank everyone, and I'm just going to read them out. Marissa and Yanni from Spain. Sue and Sarah, Sarah from England, Tim from Spain, Chris from the Curveball Show in England. He's got a very nice indie show there, and is a great Brian Wilson fan. Andreas from the Sunday Morning Pop Show from Canal K from Switzerland. Again, a lovely indie show, great Brian Wilson fan. Jonathan, Adam, Peter, Michael, John, and Sally. I think that'll do. So I think
You should tell the indie shows to have me on so I can talk
sure,
to Brian about their
sure.
to their audience as well.
I
But
will. I
I'm
will.
happy. I'm happy to field all the curveballs.
I certainly will. Well, there's two guys that I communicate with a lot on music. So yeah, I'll definitely offer that, David. They'd be delighted, I'm sure. And
As you know, you can't shut me up on the subject.
no, which is really, and the problem is, it's a bit like the film, the wonderful film we watched the other week because we had friends here from England and they'd never seen your The Beautiful Dreamer film and they'd never seen Smile concert. So we were spellbound. They were speechless, I think, at the end, really. I said, "Well, what do you think of it?" Very good. Just very good.
Okay,
And
well,
and
uh,
I don't think they'd seen anything like it actually. And when I saw it again, I thought, yeah, there's nothing to top it. In my view, there isn't anything
well,
to top
well,
it,
thank you.
and it's
Thank
amazing,
you very much.
amazing. And I just wanted to say as well, before we sort of really get into the questions Q&A, it's a Q&A really today, but the loss that we felt, that you must have felt, David, must have been absolutely appalling and devastating. And how you got through, I don't know, but the greatest sympathy in the world for that.
Well, thank you. We all are terribly saddened by the loss. The comfort is he's there in the music whenever we need him.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true, so true. And he had a great spirituality. We know that, and we hope he's in heaven, and we know he's in heaven with his brothers, and maybe they're all playing together. I don't know, doing some harmonies.
I hope they're finally forming a group called the Wilson Brothers.
Yeah, how about that? That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? So I'm going to ask you some questions now. And one of the questions, I think the first question actually was, I think, from Marissa from Madrid. And she said, how did your friendship first form with Brian?
Um, it really, I met him a number of times before I wrote the 1978 book, The Beach Boys and the California Myth. But
Mm,
I think it was after the book came out, his friends told me I was okay.
okay. Okay.
And I think that was kind of the good housekeeping seal of approval, if you will.
Wonderful.
It's like they let me into the inner circle,
Right.
and as much as anything, I made Brian laugh,
Great.
and I think that's what he appreciated my writing. He appreciated the work I did, but as a friend, uh, it was laughter that I think was at the heart of it.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Sarah asks, what was the first step, do you think, to Brian's resurrection?
Wow.
I know.
Well, the first step was the 1988 solo album.
Okay.
I think that was a terrific record.
Mm,
The production could, it was had different producers working with him, and
sure.
I kind of wish that Jeff Lynne had produced the whole album because
I know
Jeff
what you
got the
mean.
best vocals from him on that record.
Yeah. Yeah, he
But
did. Yeah.
regardless, what we heard on the first solo album, we heard Love and Mercy, of course. We
Mm,
heard Rio Grande, which is like, whoa,
mm,
he could do a mini Smile Suite, which was
yeah.
at the encouragement of Lenny Waronker, who said to Andy Paley and Brian, "Hey, could you do something like Smile?" And lo and behold, they did. Uh,
Amazing.
so that was the first step, but it really wasn't for another decade that it
Mm,
began in earnest, and it began in the strangest way with Brian going on tour to promote the Imagination album. And I remember when Melinda told us about this, I thought to myself, "That's the worst idea I've ever heard. I'm glad it's not mine." And 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 I was completely wrong. The resurrection really begins with him going on stage as a solo artist, because if he doesn't learn to be comfortable on stage,
mm,
there's no Pet Sounds Live, and of course, there's no Brian Wilson Presents Live. And you can hear that, on the Live at the Roxy
mm.
Theater album, which is being reissued with in a beautiful vinyl box set
It looks lovely.
uh,
Yeah.
next month. It's November 7th, I think, is the release date. You can
Mm,
see, you can hear him becoming Brian Wilson in public again. And
wonderful.
and so that's really uh that's what we have. If you didn't see him in concert in 99, this is the document of him becoming Brian Wilson in public.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And another question I think might have been from Yanni. What does it mean to be such a part of Smile and Brian's legacy for you?
Well, it's thank you for the question. It's more than surreal. Um, I, one of the main reasons I moved to California was, 1971, this when the Surf's Up album came out,
Mm,
and my roommate and I became obsessed with Brian and the Beach Boys, and we read everything we can. Most importantly, the Tom Nolan Rolling Stone article,
mm,
the two-parter, where he talks about Smile at length, and that today you would say we went down the rabbit hole,
mm,
and so I just, I was a journalist, and I was something of an activist, if you will. And I was in my youthful outrage period. And I
okay.
was
Yeah.
really angry.
Yeah.
I was angry that Brian, who seemed from the interview to be this sweet,
Mm,
kind, somewhat damaged person, was being used to sell an album. It didn't strike me as right.
mm,
And my roommate said to me, "Well, if you think," he finally got tired of me, I think, talking about it. And he said, "Well, if you think something's wrong, why don't you go out there and do something about it?"
yeah.
And I said, "Okay, I'm going to move to California, write a book about Brian, become his friend, and help him finish Smile." Which, if I had said that in a hospital, they would have put me into the psych ward, because it was really certifiably insane to have that
Yeah.
idea.
Sure.
But that was the driving force. This idea that this beautiful man and this beautiful music had somehow been stifled,
Yeah.
and I wanted to help free him as best as I could. Where I got the notion that I could do it, uh, it goes to my naivete, my
Hmm.
overconfidence, my
Yeah.
arrogance.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but
That's okay. That's what you needed. It's what we needed, all of us. And you didn't have a clue what was ahead of you, really. You hadn't had a clue because there were so many things ahead of you. Um, yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. When I moved to LA, Brian was just about to become uh, I don't know if she would call it exactly, but he was under Dr. Landy was about to be hired for the first time,
The first time, yeah.
which
Mm.
only lasted a year or so. The second time was horrific. As Brian describes it, it was like being 9 years in prison.
Oh, yeah,
And so yes, there were roadblocks and obstacles,
yeah,
but I think what Brian got from me and his real friends like Danny Hutton,
yeah, yeah.
and my late wife
Mm.
and her roommate Debbie was an unconditional love. We didn't love him because he might make a hit record and make us rich. We just loved him.
Yeah, wonderful.
And that, I think that really, going back to the question about when the resurrection began, it was a very, very slow
Yeah,
process of him coming to understand that we just loved him.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And Tim has asked, do you think inspired Brian to start writing this work? Obviously, it'd been Pet Sounds, but what do you think was the main driving force, or one of the main driving forces behind the inspiring him to do this work, get it
But
written?
I think that a couple of things. One, he had a great time creatively with assembling good vibrations
Yeah.
and recording in pieces and figuring out, he's creating these amazing puzzles and figuring out how to put them together.
Hmm.
But what he said was that with Pet Sounds, he had um, revealed himself. It was very emotional. It was very personal. It was very private. That what he had put, I talk about it being his emotional autobiography.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think he wanted to pull back from writing about himself and writing about something else.
Okay.
And when he met Van Dyke Parks, uh, whose wordplay in conversation is staggering,
Yeah.
I think it was like, wait a second, with this guy, I can do something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was what was the hallmark of that era of Brian's work was each album was going to be different.
Mhm.
And so when he was interviewed by one of the UK music papers in '66, he said, "Our next album is going to be as different from Pet Sounds as Pet Sounds was from Summer Days and Summer Nights." Well, that's an artist talking about being an artist. We're going to do
Wonderful.
something different.
And I think Tim also asked the spirituality that's obvious, is in Smile. Where did was that was how spiritual was Brian? Is that and that spirituality, did it come from an outside source or was it all from within Brian, do you think?
Well, if you go back to when they recorded the Lord's Prayer,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
heard that was
Oh,
important to him.
wonderful.
But
Yeah.
an amazing piece of arrangement and producing. Um,
Absolutely.
but 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 he knew he was touched by God. He
Mm.
had no doubt about it. One of the reasons he was very modest about what he achieved with the Beach Boys and on his own was he felt that he was a conduit, that it was his job, if you will, to spread God's love.
Wonderful.
And as he said, uh, under the disguise of a record, that was his way of communicating that
I
love.
think that's incredible, really, isn't it? And yeah, and going through the roadblocks and things, how did you manage the difficult emotional times? Because, there were a lot of them. How did you get through those and work through them? Do you think survive them?
Well, I think the question is, how did he survive them?
Sure.
More than the rest of us. The rest
That's
of the
true.
rest of us were for
We
large
were okay.
swaths of time,
We were okay. Hmm.
we were not allowed to even see him for good period of time.
Okay.
Um, how did he manage it? Well,
Yeah.
as he said, my name is Wilson, so I guess I have a lot of willpower.
Yeah.
He's an
Yeah.
incredibly strong guy. He just, think about where he was, say, in 1982 or 83. He lived another 40 years,
Yeah.
despite everything he went through.
Yeah.
He just kept moving forward.
Sure.
And I was fortunate enough to be the one who could talk with him about Smile in a way that wasn't like every interview where, um, you know, Brian, what are you going to do about Smile? When are you going to finish Smile? Every
Yeah.
single interview he did from 1967 on, I didn't take that point of view. My point of view was, hey, Brian, this music is so beautiful. Why
Mm.
don't I get an orchestra and a choir to perform it?
Yeah.
Because it deserves to be heard. And
Yeah.
he said, good, I deserve that.
Yeah. I love that. I so love that. Really do. I love his honesty. And going
Yes.
back to the recordings in 66, 67, when the boys were actually doing the vocal parts, when Brian was getting the boys to sing them and arrange them, they were fantastic. I mean, it seems that listening to the recordings and them singing, they were on board.
Oh,
They were on
they
board.
were incredible. The singing was incredible, unmatched in
Yeah.
popular music.
Unmatched. Yeah.
Uh, um, but with Brian, it wasn't just singing the parts right that he needed. This was his family. This was his group. He needed their unconditional support. That this was the right way to move forward, and he didn't have that.
It's interesting because, when Pet Sounds first came and there was a resistance from the boys initially, Bruce Johnston took it to London. So there were converts very quickly for Pet Sounds within the group. And I think, wasn't it Dennis and Carl who particularly supported Smile? Do you think?
That seems to be what we know historically. But
Mm,
he needed everybody on board
yeah,
100%. As David Anderley said, when
yeah,
they returned from the UK in the fall of 66, that was the major no. And
right.
what's interesting is, earlier in the year when they had returned from Japan and heard Pet Sounds for the first time, and there was resistance from the record company as well,
Mm,
he was like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to go through this and we're going to get it done. Now,
lovely.
what happened between early 66 and late 66? What was he just exhausted? Was he taking kind of self-medicating drugs to escape from this unhappy
Mm,
circumstance?
yeah,
Was the resistance even more? You would need a time machine and a lie detector
yeah.
and, and a forensic psychologist to really get to the complete truth. In the book, I've done it as much as possible by interviewing the various parties.
Mm,
But what's interesting is that the story changes from time to time.
hmm.
And so what we have, on the Beach Boys Smile sessions is the musical evidence of what he was able to accomplish to almost get it across the finish line. And I think that's disappointment doesn't even begin to describe
Mm,
the heartbreak
yeah.
for him when he decided to save the Beach Boys, he was going to
Mm,
put it on the shelf.
yeah. Yeah. Who would have guessed it would have meant all that really? And it seemed that if you listen to it, it's almost finished. It's, as you say, almost got over the finishing line. But I guess he thought he had to, yeah, he just had to make that decision, and there were other things that came along, weren't there? But we'll go through those as we go along. Um, you started assembling Smile tracks with Brian for a box set going back into the 90s. When did you first start thinking about that, and when did Brian But and how was Brian receiving that? Did he say, "Yeah, okay, fine," or did you need to persuade him to to look at it?
Well, you know, there had been a lot of talk in the 70s and 80s from the Beach Boys about what we're going to do with Smile.
Mm,
And as we know from looking at the catalog, they would take, well, let's take our prayer and cabin essence and put it on 2020. Let's take
mm,
the water chant and put it on Sunflower. Let's put Surfs Up on the Surfs Up album.
yeah.
And so pieces of Smile, um, the original recordings, not the re-recordings for Smiley Smile, but the pieces of Smile had dribbled out, so to speak.
Mm,
But then there was nothing for decades. And when Mark Lynette and I did the Pet Sound Sessions box set, that was a direct result of the success of the Good Vibrations box set.
mm,
And um, Andy Paley, who knew more than just about anybody about Beach Boys music,
yeah.
we had come up with a track listing. And and my goal in any reissues I ever did, like the twofers, was to make sure that people who had everything got something more than what they already had in a legitimate release, not a bootleg. And and so we had the track listing, and I went over to Brian's to go through it with him, and he was fine with it. There was one song that he asked us to take off,
Mm,
and well, okay, this is your music, this is your career, this is your retrospective. If you don't want that song on there, okay, uh, we have to honor, we have to show respect, and I think
yeah.
that's the key word.
Yeah.
So after we had done that, I said, I kind of steeled myself and I said, Brian, there's something really missing from this box set. It's a career retrospective, and there's this giant hole between the Good Vibrations single and the Heroes and Villains single,
Mm,
where you worked for all those months on the Smile music. We should represent it here on the box. And he said, okay.
lovely. That's lovely. I love it. And
And
that was that.
and and he said, what songs do you think we should put on there? And I reeled off a list that I had in my head, or I had written on a little piece of paper cheat sheet. And I purposely did not mention the fire sessions.
Okay.
Um, and Mark Lynett did a great job putting a bunch of heroes and villains sessions together.
You did, yeah.
And so for the first time in one place in a legitimate Beach Boys release, there was a half hour of Smile
Yeah.
music
It was wonderful.
together.
Yeah.
And it I thought that was going to be the end. I didn't think there would be any more after that until the Pet Sound sessions, because Brian and I had spoken with Capitol about following it up
Yeah.
with a Smile box set. And we actually had a 5-year plan of releases. And the Pet Sound sessions was filled with problems.
Mm.
Not the music,
Right.
not the mixing, not the packaging, but the Beach Boys' reaction to it.
Yeah.
And I was, again, it goes to my naivete. It was, we're celebrating this album, which is really why people think of the Beach Boys with such high regard. Yes, you had a lot of great hit records, but so did the Four Seasons and a lot of other people. It's
Mm.
Pet Sounds that elevates you
Yeah.
into the Beatles class.
Sure. Mm.
And so I thought this Pet Sound Sessions would be, there wouldn't be any controversy surrounding it. And it got
Mm.
held up for well over a year because of issues that needed to be resolved.
Right.
And were finally resolved. And we, it didn't, instead of it coming out on the actual 30th anniversary, it came out, the following year
Okay.
to great reviews. But after that, I was kind of persona non grata
Yeah.
in terms of Beach Boys reissues.
Okay. we won't ask you about the song that Brian didn't want you to put up because I think he might get angry and annoyed if we started talking about it. But someone did ask me about that, so I thought I'd just mention that there is
It's
that sort of curiosity. But
it's a fair enough question. It's one of these days I'll have to include that information
okay,
in a book, but
okay, fine, that's
not
fine.
today.
Someone else has asked, what effect would you think would it have had on music if Smile had come out in '67? What is there any way of getting a
I think
feel for that?
it would have had an enormous impact because you think of the effect that Pet Sounds had on the Beatles,
Mm,
and as Sir George Martin said, um, Sgt. Pepper was our attempt to equal Pet Sounds. Our
yeah, yeah.
attempt,
I
not not
know.
not that we beat it, but our attempt. And so if Smile had come out in 67, oh, the Beatles would have heard that and goes, what the heck is that?
I know.
We now have to beat that. So, and because the Beatles, whatever the Beatles did, was a kind of follow the leader, it would have had an enormous impact on
Yeah,
popular music.
yeah,
It would have kept the Beach Boys from essentially descending into the wilderness.
yeah,
And it would have not put this giant albatross on Brian's back,
yeah.
which would have meant he would have kept doing different things.
Mm,
It's not like he stopped making great music. I mean, right after he shelved Pet Sounds with Redwood, he did Darlin' and Time to Get Alone.
mm,
So it was there. He did Can't Wait Too Long, which is just a
yeah.
staggering
It's
piece.
incredible. Yeah,
So he would have kept doing music that was unlike anybody else's. And those who heard it, who were making music, would have go, wait a second, what is that?
yeah,
What do I do? How do I respond to that? And, the same way when the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show in America in 1964, and every teenage guy said, I got to get a guitar and
yeah.
form a group so the girls will scream after me like
Something
that.
like that. Yeah.
Um, Here we are in 67. If if that 30 minutes of Smile that was on the box set,
Mm,
plus Good Vibrations and a couple of other things had come out as Smile, which wouldn't have been the finished Smile album, but it would have been damn finished for us.
yeah,
Um, it would have been, it just wasn't what Brian wanted as an artist. I mean, the saddest thing he said to me was, I figured I needed a year to put it all together, and nobody would give me a year.
Good Vibrations took an awful long time to make.
Well, that's the thing. The thing that's so frustrating is, there was all this doubt about Pet Sounds, especially from the record company. And the American record company, Capitol, essentially sabotaged it by issuing Best of the Beach Boys 6 weeks after Pet Sounds. I mean,
Yeah,
why wasn't Pet Sounds being pushed with stickers that says includes the top 40 hits? Wouldn't it be
yeah,
nice? Luke John
exactly,
B. God only
exactly.
knows, Caroline
Yeah,
no.
Uh,
That would have been pretty darn
unbelievable.
good.
Yeah,
Um, so with Good Vibrations, he recaptured his momentum in terms of the pop charts. It
mm,
took him months to do that. So if it took him months to put that together,
yeah.
it's perfectly reasonable that it would take him a year to
To make an
to to
album's
to,
worth.
to
Yeah,
piece an album together.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
now let's look at it from everybody else's side. Um, the record company only cared about, as they said, meeting sales quotas.
sure.
There was no notion of recording artists, even though that's what they were called. But
Yeah,
it was a business accent
yeah,
on the music business.
yeah.
In terms of the Beach Boys, by the time late 66, early 67 had rolled around, they were all married. They're starting to have children.
Mm,
And so, wait a second,
yeah,
how do we make a living with this
yeah.
out there music?
Mm, good
And
point.
and and you know, I don't think Van Gogh or Picasso ever gave a thought to You know, how am I going to sell this stuff?
No, no,
They just
exactly.
did it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.